Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord will be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head.
Yeah.
David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them."
See, he was trying to put on someone else's way of fighting that was not his own. He was trying to wear someone else's armor for a battle he was about to go into. And we do this with blessings and people's skills and the gifts God has given other people. We want what they have instead of holding on to and letting God mold and cultivate the ground of where we are. And so we end up getting distracted by looking at other people's gifts and other people's anointing and other people's, God's been blessing them and doing this and doing that. Lord, why aren't you doing it to me? Because it's not for you. Other people's blessings is not for your life. God's blessing is for your life. God's anointing that you have in your life is over your life. It's not meant for you to go try to get under the spout of where God's pouring it out on them. You be faithful where you are, and God will pour it out in the time that he sees fit, because he is God. He knows best. And probably chances are, if you're not getting it poured out on your life, you are not mature enough. You are not spiritually ready right now in this moment in your life for God to do that to you, or it would have already happened. Sometimes we get so self-righteous that we try to tell God what he needs to do in his job, in his duties. I've been there. I'm being straight honest. I have, before we came over to this church, it was a year since the interim pastor that was over here, a year that he called and talked to me about coming over here. And about 9 months in, I was like, this ain't going to happen. I had already had a conversation with my mentor pastor that he took me out to lunch, him and his wife, and I think his son might have been there too, and they blessed me, and they said, hey, you have our blessing, you can go whenever God opens that door, and because him and my pastor were real close, and it was like, why isn't this happening? I was like, okay. I told my wife, I said, I guess we're going to start looking. We knew God was shifting us from where we were, but we didn't have a direction to go anywhere, except for that one selection. And sometimes we do this. We get antsy in the waiting period of when God is aligning things to open the doors that we need to walk through, that we need to go through, but sometimes we got to go through some valleys and mountains and build up our stamina. We got to build up our strength. We got to build up our maturity and realize that where God has us right now, we don't need to try to rush it, but crawl through where God is bringing you through. And when you come out the other side, you'll be stronger. You'll be more prepared. Sometimes you can have people who get a blessing of, say, coming from a pastor's standpoint. They get a church that is a tremendous blessing. Maybe they have the opportunity to not really have to work or whatever. And they can really be a full-time Pentecostal, full-time preacher, to where that's just the way that the church is blessed and it's set up for them. But if they get it too soon, they can end up not appreciating not having to work, or having a serious, unbalanced, and unhealthy relationship between the church, them and God, and them and their family, because they didn't go through some things to help in their heart, in their spirit, in their mind, to set up to where when that time came, where they were supposed to be, where they needed to be, that they were ready and they were able, because they had been prepared in the field of waiting, just like David was.
So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. 1 Samuel 17:32-40. So here's David, dressed in his most basic shepherd robes and armed with his most basic shepherd weapons, his sling and his staff, and ready to fight. Then there's the watershed moment. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with a shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was a little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and of the wild animals."
That's right.
David said to the Philistine,
Character development.
"You come against me with sword and spear."
Shout out to Mark Rogers in the house, one of my confidants, my preacher buddy.
Javelin. But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds.
So now think about this. You have days and days and days of a Philistine giant coming out and mocking the Israelites and talking as much trash as he can. Now, David says, it's my turn. So he must have felt some anointing or something, because he started trash talking right back in the spirit.
And of the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. 1 Samuel 17, 41 through 46. Consider the possibilities. David remained unafraid in the face of this monstrous beast. David's only weapons were a sling and a stone.
The very thing that he had been in the field being conditioned with.
Against a giant clad in 200 pounds of armor. One stone shot through the air with a whoosh, 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 and that was the end of it. Goliath was reduced
Whoosh,
to the
whoosh.
size of a bag of rocks. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's.
Yeah.
He will give all of you into our hands. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on his
That's
forehead.
an actual photograph.
Stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran.
Not just dead, decapitated.
1 Samuel 17, 47 through 51. The Philistines did not return after that. When they realized their champion was no longer alive, they split the scene. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sharaim road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. 1 Samuel 17, 52 through 53. Then David brought the head of the Philistine to Jerusalem. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put the Philistine's weapons in his own tent. 1 Samuel 17, 54.
Boy, don't play.
Biblical story of David and Goliath is one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. It is a lesson in bravery, faith, and overcoming the seemingly impossible. Was Goliath a Nephilim? Some scholars believe that Goliath the Gittite, a Gath resident, belonged to a race known as the Nephilim.
So this is where we tie into where we started off, where we talked about the Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6. So listen, this is kind of how Goliath ties into some belief. Like I said, we don't have all the answers. You probably will think of it in a different way than I do, and I'll probably see it in a different way than you do. But it's cool to talk about, so don't be a turd.
Other experts argue that Goliath was a reptile because the Nephilim were destroyed in the Great Flood during Noah's time.
Yeah, because nobody got on board. So think about it. The Nephilim.
Only Noah's family survived. Nearly 20 times in the Bible, the Nephites are mentioned.
I didn't know that.
Deuteronomy 2:11 and Deuteronomy 20:22, Joshua 12:4, Deuteronomy 3:11 through 13.
That's cool.
For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, after the cubit of a man. And this land which we possessed at that time from Aror, which is by the river Arnon, and half Mount Gilead, and the cities thereof, gave I unto the Reubenites and to the Gadites, and the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, gave I unto the half tribe of Manasseh, all the region of Argob, with all Bashan, which was called the land of giants. Some scholars believe the Philistines descended from the Anakim. Goliath's champion status is enhanced by the fact that Gath was an ancient Anakim stronghold. Some scientists believe Goliath has an identifiable family tree, implying autosomal dominant inheritance, which causes familial acromegaly or giantism.
I understood giantism. What about you? Did you know the rest of those?
In biblical times, Goliath was a colossal figure. The relations of Goliath. There are also other giants mentioned in 2 Samuel 21:15 through 22. And 1 Chronicles 20:4 through 8, who were related to Goliath in the Bible. 2 Samuel 21:15 through 22. Moreover, the Philistines had yet war again with Israel, and David went down, and his servants with him, and fought against the Philistines, and David waxed faint. and Ishbibanob, which was one of the sons of the giant.
All these names are available if you're having kids. Ishbibanob.
The weight of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight, he being girded with a new sword, thought to have slain David. But Abishai, the son of Jeriah, succored him, and smote the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore unto him, saying, Thou shalt go no more out with us to battle, that thou quench not the light of Israel. And it came to pass after this, that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai the Hushathite slew Saph, which was of the sons of the giant. And there was again a battle in Gob with the Philistines, where Elhanan the son of Jeriah-Rigam, a Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was yet a battle in Gath.
If you know anything about weaver's beams, they are massive.
Where was a man of great stature, that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant.
Boy, was that the
And
circus.
when he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimea, the brother of David, slew him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David, and by the hand of his servants. 1 Chronicles 20:4-8. And it came to pass after this, that there arose a war at Gezer with the Philistines.
You notice a common denominator in all these wars? Philistines. Even Samson had run-ins with the Philistines and killed thousands of them.
At which time Sibbecai the Hushathite slew Sippai, that was of the children of the giant, and they were subdued. And there was a war again with the Philistines, and Elhanan the son of Jair slew Lami, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, whose spear staff was like a weaver's beam.
Again.
And yet again there was war at Gath, where a man of great stature, whose fingers and toes were 24, 6 on each hand, and 6 on each foot. And he also was the son of the giant. But when he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimea, David's brother, slew him. These were born unto the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. These were Ishbanob, whose bronze spearhead weighed 300 shekels, or 3.42 kilograms, or 7.5 pounds. Saph, Lami, brother of Goliath, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod, and an unnamed warrior, a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand, and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. The story of Goliath in the Bible attests to God's mighty power and great strength over his enemies, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The story of Goliath in the Bible teaches us that even if we are currently battling big enemies and giant problems that are threatening our peace and livelihood, our Almighty Creator will protect and deliver us from all the challenges of this life.
Even if they got more toes and fingers than they should.